So in my video, How Long Should Your Longest Run Be?, I shared differing expert opinions as well as considerations to use when trying to determine how long your longest long run should be. Well, there were some commenters who were fired up that clearly did not agree that I was suggesting that anyone should do a long run longer than 2.5 to 3 hours. Here is an example of one of the comments that I got on that video. It is insanity to run longer than 4 hours. If you can't go sub 4 in the marathon, that means you're a beginner, so probably doing very low mileage. To run 4 hours for a long run for a beginner is a recipe for disaster. Now, I won't get into the assumptions being made in this comment, but because of the pushback that I've gotten in making this video, I wanted to make sure that I addressed my thoughts on this. And even more importantly, I wanted to spend some time digging into it because of the true curiosity I've got from runners who are wanting to do their best training, and they're honestly just wondering, should they be capping their long runs at this popular recommendation? So where did this 2.5 hour long run principle come from? So Jack Daniels is a renowned coach, sometimes referred to as the world's best running coach. He has several editions of a book called Jack Daniels Running Formula. The first edition was printed in 1998. So yes, we're pushing 26 years ago at this point. And in all of those editions, as far as I know, at least in the most recent one, he shares that the long run should not be longer than 2.5 hours. And for whatever reason, it's gotten pushed up to 3 hours. So I think that that is really common to hear, is that the long run should never be longer than 2.5 to 3 hours for anyone. Now, I don't argue that Jack Daniels is a run coaching genius. I highly recommend his book. I think it has super valuable information. However, I think his advice on the long run is outdated. There are far more runners now. It's become a much more inclusive environment that is absolutely great for our sport, and we should be encouraging people to come out and run these distances that they want to run, no matter what level of experience they are, no matter of what pace they are running. So disguised as perhaps someone looking out for someone's best interest when a faster runner tells a slower runner that they should cap their long run at 2.5 to 3 hours, I actually think it can be a way of gatekeeping in this sport. In fact, one commenter wrote on that video, "It is absolute stupidity that recreational runners with a pace of 8 to 9 minutes per mile or slower run a 20-mile long run because they would get injured or ill." This is exactly the type of comment that makes people feel bad about their pace. And newsflash, as a 3:29 marathoner, I ran many long runs last year between 3 hours and 3 hours and 15 minutes. And I didn't get ill or injured one time. And as a coach, I've had people run long runs over and over and over, longer than this time. All of the coaches on our team do. And it's something that we talk about quite a bit. And we know the tactics to take to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to mitigate the risk. And there are far more risky things that runners can be doing beyond extending their long run past that 2.5 to 3 hour mark. Now, here's the kicker. Not only does Jack Daniels recommend capping the long run at 2.5 hours, he also shares that it should not go beyond 25 to 30% of the weekly running volume. With his recommendation, the longest long run for someone running 50 miles per week is only going to be about 12.5 to 13 miles. Now, we know that's not going to be long enough for someone to reach their potential in the marathon or even come close. And for a lot of people, running 50 miles per week is really high, or the highest that they're really ever going to be able to get to within the parameters of their lifestyle. So for many non-elite runners who want to have a great experience in the marathon and do really well, they're going to have to push beyond that 2.5 to 3 hour long run mark. So what about this argument that a runner is going to get injured or ill if they run past 2.5 to 3 hours? It's certainly a legitimate question. And of course, it's something that people might be nervous about when they are having kind of this extended time on feet. So I have looked, and nowhere have I seen a study between runners doing 2.5 hour long runs and 3 hour plus long runs to see which one is getting injured, which one's not, how often, etc., etc. Now, common sense would tell us that all things the same, the person who is running the 2.5 hour long run versus the one doing 3+ hour long runs is probably at a lower risk of injury. But let's be real here, not everything is going to be the same. We are all unique individuals, and we have to take those things into consideration, which is probably why they are not able to really do a study quite like this. Now, when our team of coaches gets to work one-on-one with an athlete, obviously we get to spend a lot of time doing a deep dive with that athlete. We have a very clear history of where they're coming from, and we're working very closely with them to make sure that we are prioritizing all the right things when they are going through this hard training to make sure that we are mitigating the risks as much as possible. Now, the reality is that running is a high impact sport, and we have a lot of people coming to us with high goals, and I know you do too. So there's always going to be a little bit element of risk in that. We're kind of always towing that line of pushing ourselves to the limits, but not pushing ourselves too far. So to just blanketly say, no one should be running beyond 2.5 to 3 hours for their long run is really silly. And we want to be more thinking about that person as an individual athlete. What can they withstand? Is it less? Is it more? It's just not all going to be the same. So in my coaching experience, I've seen that many runners can have a long run that's up to 3.5 to 4 hours without diminishing returns. Does this mean that length of time is good for you? Not necessarily, but I want to talk about some things that every runner should be considering when they are determining how long that longest long run should be, and kind of what they're doing to make sure that they're lowering the risk as much as possible, that you are keeping yourself strong and injury-free in the process. So number one is build your long runs gradually. If you are giving your body time to make the necessary cardiovascular and musculoskeletal adaptations, you will be much more likely to withstand that jump up in mileage. Number two, this is a big one. You need to slow down. So a frustration that I have in people just blanketly stating that a long run should be capped at 2.5 hours is that is not even the most important thing. I would much rather have a runner who is going slow enough in their long run and take more time than having someone trying to hurry up and get it done so it's pushed into this amount of time. So right there, you can see that these two things just don't even make sense. So we want to be thinking beyond just having this time limit. If you are slowing down and running easy enough on your long runs, even for the more advanced runners, they're not spending their entire long run at marathon pace and should have a lot of easy pace built within that long run. So if you are actually doing your easy pace easy enough, then you are lowering your risk of injury by a lot. So that would be one of my biggest recommendations is if you are going to extend the time of your long run, you need to slow it down. Number three is fuel well. So I would be much more concerned about the fasted runner who is at a 2.5 to 3 hour long run versus the person who is fueling really, really well all the time and running more like a 3.5 to 4 hour long run. So we are really putting ourselves at a big risk if we are not fueling our bodies well for the demand that we are putting on it. A fueled runner is a fast and strong runner. So the reality is if you are fueling well before your long run, during your long run, and after your long run to make sure that you're getting that proper recovery, again, you are going to be much more likely to withstand that longer distance and time on feet. Number four is making sure that you're emphasizing strength and recovery. So there are definitely those people out there who are very fast runners and they can complete a lot of mileage in a short time frame, but they're not doing any strength training and they're really not prioritizing recovery. So they're going to be at more risk than the person who is prioritizing those things and running a bit longer. So if you're going to extend the time of your long run, make sure that you have a good strength training program. I have one on this channel, so I will link it below, and that you are recovering properly, getting plenty of sleep, and like I said before, proper nutrition. Those are big parts of that recovery. And the last one is just use your common sense. I think that's the frustration that I have really about these comments, because I really welcome dialogue that is a different opinion than mine, because I don't see run training as black and white, and it makes me a better coach. What I don't like is when people just use information as gospel and that's the only way, when we have to understand that everyone's training is looking so different. We all have our unique abilities and what we're doing outside of running. And so I just encourage you to use your common sense when you are taking in all of this different information. So here's just a couple things to think about with these long runs. Now, if you're feeling really, really fatigued at a certain distance, don't just automatically bump up to that distance the next week. Maybe do that distance again, or maybe you need a cutback week. Now, if you're just continuing to push and push and push more and more and more each week when your body is not responding well, that's obviously not a good idea. Another thing is if you're out there on a long run and you're feeling really bad and you're feeling really awful and you know it's beyond just like normal marathon training fatigue, then stop. You can try again next week. You can reflect on what went wrong. We have to pay attention to the signals from our body. If we are using common sense when we're putting our training together, it's just going to go a lot better. And at the end of the day, you have to believe that you can achieve whatever it is you're going for, whether that means covering the distance or going for a certain time goal. So if this type of training doesn't feel like it's going to equate to you believing that it's possible, then you're probably going to have to do more than that. And maybe you're just getting more to that edge of what might be a little bit risky and making sure you don't go over it. And that's the kind of conversations that we're constantly having with our athletes as well. So thanks for joining me today, guys. I would love to hear your respectful thoughts, and I will catch you in the next one.